Well, hello, friends, and welcome to episode 63 of the Our Weekly Highlights podcast. My name is Eric Nance, and like always, we are joined by Mike Thomas. Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Happy Wednesday to everybody out there.
Yes, happy Wednesday. And we're going to dive right into it. And this week's issue was curated by Kelly Bodwin. And as always, with gracious help from the Our Weekly team members and contributors. So, our first highlight today is giving us a really interesting take on leveraging the power of simulation and statistics to answer some really fun and engaging questions. So, I've been doing statistics for quite a few years, and the way I view it is that I have this analytical toolbox that often leads us down some interesting problems to solve and perhaps ways to answer some logical, yet could be complicated questions with a quantitative mindset. Now, certainly in the realm of competitions, like in sports, which I follow a lot, analytics are playing a huge role in both the strategy and even fan interest and engagement. And in fact, in episode 58, we heard a little bit about the merging of another genre of sports, reality TV, in a fun story about MTV's The Challenge show. But that's not the only game in town, of course. Now, while this is technically a drama, the recently launched Squid Games on Netflix blends a unique mix of survival horror and competition up a few notches, where the contestants compete in difficult challenges just to survive. One of those challenges involved crossing a glass bridge with two choices at each step. One glass is sturdy enough to cross, while the other glass piece leads to certain death. Given the assortment of players and constraints, one might be curious just how many players will safely make it across and continue living to the next challenge. That question, among others, was investigated by John Halvidson, assistant professor at George Washington University, using a unique blend of simulation methodology and some highly performant R code. So, given the dichotomous nature of the choice at hand for each player, John starts with a straightforward function to simulate the outcome of a single game of crossing this bridge, given the number of players and the number of steps needed to cross the bridge. The way John manages the infrastructure is one aspect catching my attention in this story, because he decided to hold everything inside a data dot table, the data format made popular by the R package of the same name, which has many performance benefits over the built in data.frame structure in base R. In addition, John started quenching his curiosity by using the existing simulated data he generated and either aggregating it or summarizing it via visualization, such as what place in line of the players leads to more likely survival, as well as how long a bridge should be extended to ensure the game has at least two survivors with reasonable probability. And in a demonstration of near real time community feedback, John updated his analysis in this post to include a time limit for crossing the bridge to further mimic the show's situation in the particular episode. Now, I personally use the powerful techniques in simulation practically daily in my professional duties, so having John's post gives to me a realistic and accessible introduction to the value that simulations bring to gain insights into statistical phenomenons, and that's a huge win in my book. So, Mike, what caught your eye about this story?
So I have not seen Squid Games yet, but I have heard a lot about it on Twitter. My wife saw it; she had some mixed reviews, so I got to get my Netflix game up a little bit and check it out because I think then it might be great to actually watch this scene after reading this blog. I thought John articulated all of his points really, really well, and it sounds like in this game there was a gigantic advantage to going last or later because you could either, A, follow the path of someone before you who was successful, or B, benefit from the mistakes, the missing panes on the path that broke of those before you who fell to their death. Uh, So I really enjoy simulation as a tool. I don't think that there's enough blogs written up about simulations, which is why I really enjoyed this one, because simulation really relates to risk and uncertainty, which I think is something that a lot of industries, probably from pharma, where you are, Eric, to finance, where a lot of our clients are, they face a lot of risk and uncertainty. Not everything's just a point estimate. Rarely is there only one possible outcome. So when I was first learning machine learning, I was like, who needs simulation anymore? Who needs resampling? And then after I gained some more real world experience, nowadays I find myself doing a little more probabilistic modeling, like Monte Carlo simulation, like John took up here, and Bayesian approaches than ML. So I would definitely point, data.table users towards this article. I had to give myself a little bit of a refresher on the data manipulation syntax from that particular package. I know there's some awesome performance benefits. I was also thinking, I'll throw this out as a challenge to any listeners out there who want to overachieve, but it would be very cool to see someone recreate John's analysis using dtplyr, which is
Oh,
the
right.
package that allows you to write dplyr code, but it translates it to data.table code under the hood to get that performance boost. So I'm going to challenge that to somebody else. I'm secretly challenging it to myself, but I am making no promises about how soon I will get to that blog.
That's a great idea. And what's nice is John's laid out this code in a very succinct and accessible way, where I would imagine that with some time and a little ingenuity, we could definitely make that happen. So, community out there, let's see what you got. I mean, we see a lot of engagement with things like Tidy Tuesday. I also think it's great engagement when you see posts like this and put your own take on it. And I think that's a great idea. And this will shock probably a lot of people. I actually don't have a Netflix account, so I've never seen this show either. But it sounds interesting, so maybe I'll fork up some dough and sign up to catch this very interesting premise of a show. So
I'll definitely also probably put in there that there are some great ggplots interspersed within this blog,
yes,
within the simulation code. So I think he does a really good job of visualizing some of this probabilistic simulation that he's doing. So that might be interesting to the listeners out there who are looking to kind of bridge any of their probabilistic modeling and Monte Carlo simulation over to tangible visual ggplots.
absolutely, and that's a perfect segue into our next highlight. And so, Mike, why don't you take us into how ggplot's supercharging the world of artistry in the world of art?
Smooth transitions, Eric. That's what this podcast is all about.
You know it.
So, so Megan Harris, who's out of the University of Buffalo, she's a data integration specialist. She has an awesome personal website that she calls the Tidy Trekker, which really cool name, especially for those of us who love the Tidyverse and love R. Her blog here is some artistry work that she was doing, and it really demonstrates the versatility of ggplot. There's a lot of people on Twitter. She shouted out a few in her blog post who are doing incredible work in the artistry space lately. It seems to be a hot topic on Twitter. So it's great to see this article make the cut this week. Some other examples, that I've seen are Jacqueline Nollis's GGIRL package, where you can literally get a postcard sent to someone containing a ggplot physically on that postcard. It's like linked up to Stripe for payment, and it's all within a Shiny app using Colin Fay's brochure package. Incredible stuff. So the intersection of art and R is a really cool space that I probably never saw coming. I guess it's a testament to all the work that the Tidyverse team has done on ggplot, right? So one thing that I noted in her blog, she has a couple different examples of visuals that she's created and all of the code that she uses to create those visuals. And she talks you through the steps in her thought process. I'm someone who doesn't use a lot of trigonometry on a day-to-day basis, but I feel like a lot of trig functions can be employed specifically for creating beautiful ggplot art. Especially notable in her last piece of art in the blog, which is called the rainbow rose, which she depicts kind of a rainbow of competing spirals in space on a dark background. Really incredible stuff. And it's very cool to see, her mathematical code and her employment of, sine, cosine, different trigonometric functions under the hood there to output this beautiful piece of art. Um, I feel like I've also seen a lot of ggplot artists draw inspiration, interestingly enough, from accidents while trying
Yes.
to develop a plot that wasn't intended at all to be art. I can't say that I've done that necessarily recently. I'm sure I've made accidents, but I don't think I got inspired by any of them, or maybe that's just not how my brain works, unfortunately. But if you saw my stick figure hand drawings, you would probably argue that my ggplot couldn't possibly be worse than that. So, anywho, this is a really interesting space for me because it's something I haven't dove into at all. It feels like a little bit of the different side of the creative brain to me, which I really enjoy taking a look at. And all of her code is also available on GitHub repositories that she linked to in the blog. So, very, very well done blog post.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating world to watch, and like you, I didn't see any inclinations of this coming. Although I do remember, before the artistry movement really took off, you would see occasional Twitter posts of what we called accidental art. And I'll just say that my accidental art has never been as fun looking as what those happened to be. It would just be a mismatch of spaghetti plots when I forgot to do a time analysis correctly, and it was just over plotting, and it literally looked like my 5-year-old just got the marker and went to town on it. Uh, so it's fascinating to see that no matter which of, say, the side of the brain that you feel most comfortable with for creating things, there's a way in R to appease your desires in different ways. My creativity is kind of mixing different components together, and you may not necessarily see a visual of it other than maybe a cool shiny app. But with what Megan's done and what others like Danielle have done and Thomas Peterson, it's a fascinating way to combine tech with traditional, what might be very painstaking efforts of creating your own artwork. So it's something that, yeah, doesn't feel natural to me, at least at this point. But maybe that's what I'll do when I retire. I'll just make generative art in R. Who knows? Maybe just something to unwind after a long career.
I think that's a great idea. And I would also maybe add one last thing that, I think a lot of this artistry takes advantage of probably the layering aspects of ggplot
Yes.
and the ability to overlay multiple images onto the same 2D space. It makes for some really cool compilations of art. And maybe I'm going down a theme here, but I can't imagine having to do this in base R using the old plot functions. Thank goodness for ggplot.
Yeah, I know some people can do some amazing things with base R plots. I'm just not one of them. I'm
Neither am I.
very comfortable with ggplot2 and the tools it gives me, and even things like Plotly to an extent. I'm spoiled. Let's put it that way. Although I have heard about some developers online that have even made their own JavaScript, built plots without even using frameworks like D3. Like they coded it up all themselves. Mad respect to that, but there's just no way I can do that.
Same here. Use what's easy to start at least.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, well, as always, we have links to all these stories in the notes. And rounding out our highlights today, it kind of gets to a point I just alluded to a minute ago. As we look at kind of the advent of new tech in the world in 2021, it's not just to perform things like data science with languages like R, but with the new technology available, we are now able to access and create infrastructure to house the data processing and to distribute it and share it to the world. And this is one of the things that I get excited about because it combines, at least personally, my two big passions, data science with R and Linux and open source. And while I'll never be a professional chef, but I feel like one sometimes when I'm able to mix and match combinations of using R and various clouds or analytics technology. And I have all these ingredients at my disposal, but the way I mix it together, that's where I get the creative juices flowing. And so as I was thinking about this many years ago, I was in this sort of situation where I remember as if it was yesterday when RStudio released the open source versions of RStudio Server and Shiny Server. This blew me away. And of course, with a spare server here in the basement at that time, I threw Shiny Server on it. I created my first app and I was hooked ever since. And that led to me installing it onto the company servers. And eventually we got scaled up, as they say. Well, these days, like I said, in 2021, you don't need a beefy home server in the basement to play with this tech. You can now spin up this infrastructure on demand in easier ways than it's ever been in the past. And that's where Tan Ho, a data scientist and analyst, has been dedicating time on his recent regular R and Shiny live stream schedule to dive into a particular topic of actually spinning up your own open source version of Shiny Server on Amazon Web Services or AWS. And now, what I really like about this is that while I personally have been playing with Linux for more years than I probably care to admit, I know firsthand that when I first started out, how completely foreign the concepts looked to me of like installing server software, updating system libraries, managing user accounts. And I was not an infrastructure engineer. I'm certainly not one now, but it took me a long time to learn all that. But what Tan was able to do in this stream is to go step by step, saying, okay, here's the app I created. How do I share it with the world? He went into Amazon, launched up an EC2 instance, which is basically their way of saying a virtual server, and went through his preferred workflow, all in a GitHub README to go show each step and what you can expect to see as output and how you check how things are working along the way. And not just seeing that entire process end to end was fascinating, but it was also just as fascinating when he, like me, will often encounter hiccups along the way. Not everything goes smoothly. And in particular, when he was trying to deploy an app on this server that was using renv for package management, it didn't go smoothly the first time. But watching Tan's troubleshooting techniques, along with a couple pointers in the chat, um, you might know who was pointing that in a little bit, we were able to solve the problem and he was able to finish off his tutorial live, which is still um, big props to those that can do it live. It's not easy, but he was able to put this out there. And now, to me, it makes these concepts more accessible to be able to take some excellent work that you've done, and in this case with Shiny, and share it with the world, all controlling the stack on your own with the help of cloud services. So, Mike, I know you're pretty fascinated by the world of infrastructure deployments as well. What were your thoughts about what Tan did here?
I think it was awesome that Tan took the time to put this into a video. I think there's a lot of blogs posts as well that maybe will solve part of the problem and show you how to solve part of the problem, but not do the end-to-end life cycle. And even better on top of that is Tan ran into some hiccups along the way and powered through them. And we've done some training in the past at my company, and some of the feedback that we've gotten has been, the parts where you ran into a bug and I had to troubleshoot it were some of the most educational parts for the people watching, because that's the real world. We've run into hiccups along the way, and sometimes understanding the process for getting past them is more valuable than just the knowledge of the right way to do it. So I think this video is incredible. If you have the time to watch it, it's a great walkthrough. And again, there's a lot of blogs and even videos that tackle part of the problem, and the fact that he took the time to show kind of this whole end-to-end process of actually spinning up this Shiny server and deploying an app on it is phenomenal. I'll add a couple different resources out there, maybe give a couple other shout outs. I know we don't I know we make a lot of money on this podcast, Eric, so we don't want to give away too many
Yeah, I
free
know, right? It's
advertisements.
rolling in the dough,
So
man. Yeah.
I'll just shout out Docker in general, which I think is a phenomenal tool if you're ready to take the next step to start deploying some of this stuff to look into. I think it's made our lives quite a bit easier. Um, Docker was available when I first started getting into some of this data engineering and app deployment stuff. I'm not sure if it was when you first were spinning up your own home server. So I can't imagine some of the extra hurdles that you had to go through without you being able to deploy a container. But kudos to you for that. I've also seen some other awesome resources out there just about Shiny deployment options. And I'll shout out Peter Solomos at Analythium. He's got a ton of great content on all of the different options that you have for deploying Shiny apps and the pros and cons of them. I even followed one of his tutorials to deploy my company's internal Shiny proxy site, which contains all of our paid subscription apps that we license to customers.
That's great.
So yeah, it's some phenomenal resources. So I feel like being able to kind of take this next step into deployment and stand up something tangible can really separate a data scientist who's trying to stand out from the pack and get hired or get that next promotion. For example, it's hard enough to get code working on our own laptop. That sometimes, if you haven't gone down this path before, it feels like an impossible hurdle to get it running on another computer, like a cloud instance that we can't even see, right? It's intimidating, but the more resources that are out there, like Tan's videos and Peter's blogs, hopefully the less intimidating it becomes for those who are just starting out here. So I recently also saw a job posting for a Shiny deployment engineer that came across my timeline the other day, and it was really inspiring to see that there's at least one organization out there that sort of understands that data science is a team sport, because this whole end-to-end process, Tan showed it in a 1 hour video, but in terms of actually standing this up inside your company, dealing with all of the security and the firewalls and authentication that they might potentially have, scaling it up to thousands of users, you shouldn't feel like you have to be the unicorn who can necessarily do all of those things. So I think that especially Shiny app development and deployment can be a great team sport for the organizations that are willing to invest in it. I would say that maybe to wrap up my side of it is that my advice to somebody who's kind of aspiring to start standing up a Shiny server. I think there's a lot of folks who are starting to build their own local Shiny apps and are getting interested in deployment. And if you're interested in doing this within your organization, if your org hasn't done anything like this before, this stuff will likely blow them away, and you'll very likely be asked to keep running with it. You'll create a ton of job security for yourself and a huge impact on your organization. But I would make sure that you also communicate to them that the goal should be to manage all of this as a team if they want to make sure that it has longevity and is successful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I remember when I was spinning up those open source versions of RStudio and Shiny, I was hooked. I mean, it was very interesting to me. Like I said, it was combining my two passions at once. But this thing started to escalate quite quickly. And that's when, luckily, I was already partnering with the IT group. And then we were able to see things through and bring it up to the next scale where it didn't have to be me wearing two hats all the time. But I think the skills you do learn and at least trying this stuff out can pay off in ways that you might not expect. And for me, it actually helped me build relationships with that group to show them that, hey, I'm willing to get a little bit in the weeds. I'm willing to try something that technically is outside my job description just as a learning exercise, but I want to bring you along and then learn from all of you to make myself better at it, but also make the organization feel better about it too. So that's great advice to make sure to think about the team setting when you have that available, and to certainly never be shy about expressing your desire to get maybe more resources if you see that it's going to be a big impact with what you're doing. So a lot of these things I've learned the hard way, but the tooling is out there to try this out and to hopefully bring meaningful change to wherever you're working at.
Absolutely, and I have no doubt that Tan's video here will get a lot of views and eyeballs as the world continues to discover the impact that Shiny can have.
Yeah, and I'll just say there's almost nothing Tan can't solve. Whenever he watches some of our streams like mine or others, he always solves at least one complicated issue that would take me 5 hours to solve. So he's just a super guy, very brilliant across many aspects of our development. So if you're not following his channel on Twitch, I highly recommend it. It's a great community that's really budding up with learning out loud and really bringing ourselves along the journey. It's been fun. More on that probably in future episodes.
He is also everywhere on the R for DS Slack channel. He
Yes.
is answering everybody's questions, solving problems left and right. It's incredible.
Yep, and that's where this idea of his office hour came from. He wanted to actually put visual video context around the answers that he was going to say. I know not everybody has the capability of doing that, but boy, it's a great learning opportunity when you can. So, yep. Tan doesn't get enough kudos, so I'm going to make sure he gets it on this podcast. So, as always, this issue has way more than just what we covered here. Another piece that got my attention was this great analysis of what is the most American of American films, because it was a great use of the GT and GT Extra packages for the upcoming R Studio table contest that's about to conclude in a couple weeks.
Yeah, so I definitely wanted to point out the R Studio table contest. You have until November 15th to get your tables in. Eric, I don't know if you've ever done the Shiny competition. I think that one has been running for a few more years than the table contest. I think the table contest, the inaugural, might have just been last year for the first time. I think it kind of coincided with the GT package that came out just about at that same time. So, very much looking forward to seeing what comes out of the R Studio table contest. I think for maybe Eric and myself, we do a lot of Shiny development, so our brains are sort of trained for interactivity. And this the table contest, while things can still be interactive, it kind of forces you to think a little bit more statically and maybe more explicitly put exactly on the page the message that you're trying to convey in your table. So I will definitely be. I'm working on our submission, Catchbook's submission for a table for this particular contest, which is going to coincide with our release that just came out of our CRAN package, which is called Migrate, for seeing credit risk transition matrices across one risk state to another risk state. It doesn't just apply to credit risk, but that package has had a new release just come out recently. So we're going to try to coincide that package with our table submission to maybe make a cool little table here for the 2021 contest.
Sounds exciting, and I hope I get to throw my head into the fray, so to speak. And I have my eyes on some fun data sets that definitely don't get a lot of attention in the R kind of social sphere, and probably combining that with one of my favorite packages for tables called Reactable. I've been able to do some cool stuff with that in my apps, and I got some ideas. We'll see. No spoilers. We will find out.
Yes, I am sorry to the DT package, but when I discovered Reactable, I no longer use DT. Reactable is incredible.
Yeah, yeah, it's always great to have choice, but yeah, once I saw certain features of it, it literally went into one of my most high profile apps at work last year because I could do so much with it. So there is no shortage of packages that create tables in the R ecosystem, where I would say even as of like 6, 7 years ago, making tables in R was basically X table or bust. Now it's way more choices, way more ideas that you can put in real production that would have required some real ninja skills to pull off in the past. So get your creative juices flowing. There's always great things to learn by doing. And also, I just enjoy seeing the entries come through and what we can learn from all that, much like the shiny contest that you mentioned earlier. All right. Well, we are probably going to wrap that up. So, Mike, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Mike underscore Ketchbrook, Ketch Brook.
Excellent. And I am on Twitter at the Rcast. The Twitch channel is twitch.tv/rpodcast. And the YouTube channel is youtube.com/shinydevseries. And of course, this very podcast is linked directly on the R Weekly homepage itself at rweekly.org. If you have any feedback, don't hesitate to reach out to Mike or myself. We love hearing from the audience. So please keep the feedback coming. That's going to put a bow on episode 63. And we'll be back with another edition of our weekly highlights next week.